Hello and welcome to this flipped instructional session on Unit 13, Lesson 3. We're taking a look at a golden age and we're really focusing on the Tang and Sung dynasties. So let's start with our lesson introduction, and don't forget, as always, when we open up that first lesson, make sure you open up your lesson resources. We're going to take a look at the objectives of this lesson. We're going to identify the reign of the Tang Dynasty as a golden age for China, identify the Tang era as the high point of trade on the Silk Road, and trace a timeline of critical events of the Tang and Sung dynasties. So you want to open up your student guide, and those are things that you are going to take note of. So if you've got your note guides printed out, make sure that you take notes on each and every one of these things, identifying the Tang Dynasty as a golden age. So take any notes you can on that, on the silk trade, anything that it talks about there, and then also the timeline. You're going to put that in your notes as well. So I'm going to go back to the lesson, and we will refer back to the student guide when it tells us to. But let's go ahead and read our lesson introduction. After Yangdi was murdered, the Tang Dynasty assumed power and ruled for 3 centuries. China enjoyed a period of harmony, stability, and achievement, a golden age. So those are 3 things that you probably want to take note of. It's explaining or describing this golden age, and we know that there is harmony, we know that there's stability, and we're going to mark some of the achievements as well. So make sure that that is in your notes. Art and literature and learning flourished, and the busy trade route, later known as the Silk Road, became a conduit for valued goods and the era's information superhighway. Eventually, however, the Tang Dynasty faltered. The people, fed up with paying high taxes and being obligated to do forced labor and military service, rebelled. Would China splinter into smaller kingdoms again, or would another dynasty rise to take the Tang's place? Let's go to our next slide. It is going to tell us to check our reading. So review your reading from Chapter 10, A Golden Age Under the Tang Dynasty, to the end. So you're going to be reading pages 576 to 581. And in fact, it told us to read these at the end of our lesson in Lesson 2. And so you should have already read this. If you haven't, read it now. But now we're just going to review that. And then you're going to complete the quick check activity. So I'm going to scroll down. Here's that quick check activity. If for some reason the questions don't show, you may need to refresh your flash. So read those pages and complete the quick check here. Anything that you're not sure of in that quick check, it's a good thing if you get any of these wrongs or you're not sure of the answers, to make sure that you have that in your notes, because these are going to be important points that you may be asked about later. So as you read on page 576, I'm just going to point out a few things that I would most definitely have in my notes, even highlight in your book. So you're starting on 576, A Golden Age Under the Tang Dynasty. So here on page 576. And it talks about, again, some of the same information that we just read in the lesson introduction. But then it goes on to say, under the Tang, China enjoyed a golden age, a time of harmony, stability, and achievement. Government ran well under the Tang. They streamlined the imperial bureaucracy. So as far as achievements go, in my notes or even in the margin of the book, I would have a list of achievements, and I would put it here or highlight it and number it, because the achievements under the Tang Dynasty are going to be important. They cut the number of official posts and sent government officials from region to region. These officers kept the emperor well informed about what was happening across the vast realm. Meanwhile, China's capital, Chang'an, grew to become the largest city in the world. It attracted merchants, adventurers, and religious pilgrims from Central Asia, Persia, and the Middle East. The Great Walled Capital stretched 6 miles from the west to the east and 5 from north to south. It boasted of a population of about 2 million. Here were government buildings, 2 large street markets, and the temples of 5 different religions. All were connected by great avenues that gave the city the look of a huge checkerboard. Some avenues were 500 feet wide. In New York City today, Fifth Avenue is only 100 feet wide. So that just gives you an idea of just how big this bustling city was. You're going to continue reading, and it's going to talk to you a little bit more about what life was like, what the culture was like. Life at court was pleasant for the sons and daughters of the Tang Dynasty. To entertain themselves, they threw day-long parties that featured troops of acrobats, musicians, wrestlers, and dancers. All right, and then continue reading, and it's going to talk about poetry and some other things. Then you're going to read The Brilliant Emperor's Daydreams, and this is one of the imagining the past stories that you're going to read. Ask yourself questions about what does this story tell us about the Tang Dynasty. And then we're going to go on and learn about what happened here about the one of the emperors being overthrown. And a bloody civil war followed, and the Tang Dynasty managed to hang on to the throne. The Tang clung to power until 907, but by then the dynasty had little power left. Its glory was then gone. Rebellion again threatened the state, like the fine piece of china that fell from the emperor's hands. China itself was about to be smashed into pieces. After the fall of the Tang, we're going to learn about the Sung Dynasty. Under the Sung Dynasty, China enjoyed another 3 centuries of relative peace and prosperity, even though the Sung never reconquered the northern and western regions that the Tang had controlled. The Sung rulers further refined the bureaucracy, which included more than 12,000 upper-level officials. So continue reading to the end of this chapter, all the way through page 581, and make sure that you answer those questions. You're also going to learn about the porcelain that was created in China. It was a prize export of China, so China would export out porcelain. Scroll down here, make sure that you read all about the porcelain. And then you are going to complete exchanges along the Silk Road to explore cultural diffusion, which is the movement of goods and ideas. So you're going to see what was moving along the Silk Road, find out how the products like porcelain became prized in other parts of the world. So if you scroll down, here is where you're going to be looking at that exchange. Again, if your flash does not appear, go ahead and refresh that. All right, so you're going to read all of that about the exchanges on the Silk Road. So that's not in your textbook, but online. Use what you know. Create a timeline and determine the span of several dynasties by completing the Tang and Sung sheet. So that is here. And you want to make sure that you keep this with your notes, because you're going to want to refer back to this as you complete not only this lesson assessment, but also the unit assessment. And I'm going to make that a little bit smaller there so you can see the top of it. So make sure you complete this timeline and answer these questions, and then you have that there in your notes to refer back to. Once you complete that activity, it'll be time for your lesson assessment. So make sure that you master that lesson assessment. And then you've got beyond the lesson. This activity is optional, but I do want to pull that up so that you can take a look. It is really cool to look at. You're going to look at Sultan's Lost Treasures, China's China. And so I'll move this up here. It'll take you to an outside link, so it just lets you know that yes, this is a link that is outside of your K-12 curriculum, but it's on China's China. So I encourage you to take a look at this, search and see what else can you find out about Sultan's Lost Treasure and about the China's China. And also, one really cool thing is to look at, which isn't this so pretty, the blue and white porcelain that's made from a fine white clay, and the blue designs are painted on the piece before it is fired in the kiln. So really cool. But I wanted to point out that yes, this is beautiful, but take a look at, if you click on this right here, Sultan's Lost Treasures, it takes you to a companion website. And if you take a look at this, I'm going to click go to the companion website. It takes you, you're still in PBS, but you're on this Sultan's Lost Treasure website, and you learn of this, a French-led expedition to recover thousands of porcelain and other artifacts from a centuries-old Chinese shipwreck off the coast of Brunei. And so just pretty cool to take a look at that shipwreck and see what you find out about recovering all of that. So that's pretty cool. You can take a look at that. So you can look for a flip follow-up session in your Class Connect schedule. Attend that live session to carry this topic and others further into practice. You can also attend if you have any questions. You can attend the Help Lab that follows our flip follow-ups. Have fun, and I will see you on the flip side.